Okay, thank you for having me. I typically start every talk with three information at the beginning. Who am I? What will I talk about, and why is this relevant? My name is Evangelos. I'm 42 years old. This month I'm celebrating 8 years of being a digital strategy consultant, self-employed. Before that I was head of innovation strategy at Deutsche Telekom. And before that working for Agile Media AG, which at that time, end of 90s, beginning of 2000s, was one of the three main web agencies in Germany. So you see, I'm going way back, and we will need this during this lecture. What will I talk about? Feed streams and the future of content distribution. You know feeds from social networks, and many of you have portable devices with you. We will dig deeper into this later, but why is this relevant? Because content distribution, or let's put it in a broader context, reaching audiences, is basically a prerequisite for success in the digital world. And this is not only relevant to media, publishers, but also relevant to anyone who runs a digital business or a digital media with a business purpose. So I brought with me 4 chapters. We will look into the past, Web 2.0. Many of you were probably little kids by then. We will look into the present to understand the mechanics and dynamics that drive media evolution currently. And then we will try and look in the future with cards and apps and how the content distribution in the near future could maybe look like. I've said it, I'm going way back, but we have to remember the web is a very, very young medium. If you compare it to any other media that we know, newspapers, books, TV, radio, we are going back like 20 years in the open internet, accessible to any of us as consumers. So the web is not even a toddler, it's a baby. It's very early, nothing is finished, everything is moving. I don't know if we will finish this media development anytime in the future, but you have to remember that everything we are doing now, devices that we use, mechanisms of content distribution or content production, will dramatically change probably many, many times in the coming years. So if we look back, I went online, for example, in 1994. Some of you may have not been born by then. But if we look back in how the web was organized at that time, the Web 1.0, as we call it, the very first internet that was accessible to consumers, was structured. We had categories, we had hierarchies, we had a clear structure where to find which information and which media. So when in 1994 you put in your AOL CD or your T-Online CD in your 386 computer and dialed up with your modem to the internet, you would get a screen like this, where you would have categories that indexed websites. Right? You could click on travel and then see different destinations under that, or websites that describe these different destinations. You could click on sports and we'll find different sports. And if you click on skiing, then you would find alpine skiing or Nordic or whatever. So the web was structured in a way that we knew from physical media. Like in a library, you would go in a library and say, I want to know about South America, and there would be an index telling you where to go. This is in the 3rd floor, 2nd aisle, left shelf, I don't know. So this is how we organized the internet in the very beginning. And even a few years later, this screenshot is from 1998. By then, this was my starting page in the internet, Yahoo. A few years later, we would still have categories. Like there was a search, a keyword search, not very intelligent one, but there was one. But basically, you would have websites organized in categories. If you wanted to see if any TV station would have a website, you would click on news and media, and then on TV, and then on countries, and then maybe find the TV station. This is how we did it in the past, and this is what we would call a destination web based on directories. What we tried to do back then was to map content or map destinations and show which are close to each other, which are similar to each other from a content perspective, which have a very big distance. So we basically had everything in directories. Then came search, intelligent search, keyword search. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Google. Google's domain, just to give you an idea of how young these companies are, the domain was registered in September 1997. Google went out of Stanford servers in 1998. So we just have 16 years of real intelligent search. And Google still says that their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And how do they do this, and how did they did it back in that time? They gave you a search window. You could enter a keyword, and this would result in links, right? So you would have no categories, no hierarchy, no structure. It would just give you links to sites that would be relevant to this keyword. Now think of forums, message boards. You would have a community about cars, and people would talk about cars in these message boards, and then they would get to know each other and form a community and become friends. And suddenly someone would ask, who of you has whatever insurance for your house? And they would start talking about different topics. With a categorized organization of information, you would not be able to find this. Google, with their search algorithm, was able to find this because they wouldn't look for cars in a category that says, I don't know, motors or moving vehicles. They would just look for the keyword and links that are related to these keywords. So what you do in search is you type in a keyword, and the search engine would send you to some destination somewhere in the web where you would find relevant content relating to your keyword. So this is still a credible simulation of a destination web. You don't really understand why they send you to this destination, but as long as this is relevant, that's fine, right? So basically, there's a trillion choices of content in the internet, and Google can tell you by keyword where to go. To a server in Tahiti with content published in 1997, or to a server in Cologne with content published 7 minutes ago. Google can just tell you where to go, and you wouldn't have to mind about the structure, where it is located, how it relates to anywhere else. You would have endless choices, but Google gives you the destination where to go, and by this endless universe of digital content that exists out there is made accessible. Google basically unlocked the power of the internet by having intelligent search. And only then, when we had keyword search, it really made sense to create content. I had a website in the 90s, and probably like 3 visitors, my mother, my sister, and me, because it was very hard to get it indexed on T-Online or get it indexed on Yahoo or be in any of these catalogs. By search, anyone can find content that you produce. So it's kind of an irony that search made it possible for all of us to really produce content and then find audiences. So all these services that we used to know as Web 2.0, WordPress created an army of bloggers, was launched in 2004. YouTube was launched in 2005. Facebook was launched in 2004, but only went out of university servers in 2006. MySpace was launched in 2003, got big in 2006, 2007. So this Web 2.0 social networking beginning only made sense because there was a search. And for example, YouTube in 2005, this is a screenshot from the very beginning, they were still thinking they could categorize the content that they would have, right? So you would see up there categories and channels. So you could upload something to the channel music. Of course, this doesn't make sense today. I think the number is somewhere around 100 hours of content that is uploaded to YouTube every minute. So I'm speaking for what now, 5 minutes? We have 500 hours of content uploaded to YouTube. Impossible to put this in categories and navigate through this site. So YouTube became the second biggest search engine after Google. The only way to navigate this site is to type in a keyword and find the content that relates to that keyword. So when I created as a kid something with Lego, I went to the living room and shouted, "Mama, Mama, look what I built," right? And this is what we did with digital content too. So we create content, or we find something interesting at the beach. Look what I found, a seashell, right? this is what we do with digital content as well. So we create content, or we find interesting stuff somewhere in the web, and what we do is we show it to our friends and family, to our digital connections that often are an image of our connections in real life. So does anyone know this guy?
Tom, right?
This is Tom. This is MySpace Tom. MySpace had one particular thing. Everyone who signed up had a friend from the very beginning, and this was Tom. So Tom had like 250 million friends at some time. New social networks like MySpace helped us to show content that we created to our friends and to our digital connections, right? And still, even in those days, we still try to map everything, right? Humanity cannot just leave logics that were learned for hundreds of years with media. So this is a map someone built in 2007 where they try to show how every service in Web 2.0 maybe connects to another. So you see that Apple is close to iTunes and close to BBC, but far further away from Amazon, and up there's Microsoft, and this connects maybe to Yahoo, etc. I still continue. Others built a periodic table of the internet, trying to map all services in another logic, or this prism is still around until today. And it's growing and growing. Is not really a map. This comes from, I think, 2008, 2009, and there you see that Twitter, for example, is in a part of that prism that's called micromedia and is very close to blogging. It was not in social networks. In social networks, you would have Facebook, the very early Facebook. You would have High Five and MySpace and Bebo, services that you probably even don't know anymore, even if this is just a few years ago. We still try to map stuff because Web 2.0 made apparent that digital is chaos. Right? There is no structure. There is no hierarchy. There is no category where we can put content in. Right? Things are not in order in the web. We don't know where they are physically, and we don't have to care, basically. Because these old social networks didn't really help us. You had to hop from MySpace site to MySpace site of your friends to see what they were publishing or send messages to each other. But modern social networks found a solution to this. How was it possible that MySpace sold for $580 million US, 250 million users, is virtually non-existent anymore? Because modern social networks introduced a new way to bring order into chaos, right? To make the world's information accessible. And the great tool to do this is basically what we are calling a newsfeed nowadays. You are all on Facebook, I assume? Yes. And then you probably still know the desktop Facebook that I'm showing to you now. And what I framed there in red is the newsfeed, and this is where basically 95% of the action in Facebook happens. Right? You can see how important that is. If you look on the mobile real estate that the newsfeed gets, it's simply 100%. Only if you tap within your app on the screen, you will see a navigation or something else. The rest is newsfeed. 100% of your screen is newsfeed. How does that newsfeed work? You probably know all this from your daily usage of Facebook. You will get content into your newsfeed from your digital connections. For example, some friend posts an image or writes, "I'm in Hong Kong," or produces content in any shape or form and puts it into your newsfeed. Then you would have posts from accounts that you follow. You might follow some media, or you might follow your favorite football club, or you might follow your favorite actor, or you might follow whichever entity that publishes content, and they put news into your newsfeed. Then you would have content that was not created by your friends, but found by your friends, right? So today in my newsfeed, I had like 9 times the new Deichkind video, which was released today, and I had it 9 times in my newsfeed. I would have a story about a guy who took 10 years to carve a cave, right? Gets 30 seconds of my attention, and then it's gone. But still, this comes to my newsfeed from friends who found that content somewhere in the web, and then you would have maybe content to which friends reacted. You may know this from Facebook. Peter commented on this story from this and that media that you're not connected to, Or on Twitter, for example, Peter retweeted the tweet from Conan O'Brien or whoever. So there's different types of content that come into your newsfeed, but this content can come from anywhere in the web, from any time in the web. From a server in Tahiti with content from 1997, from a server in Cologne with content from 12 minutes ago. So you see where I'm going at. This is fundamentally different from what we know from search. Search is still a destination web. It sends you somewhere in the internet to access content that you want to have. But in news feeds, content is coming to us. That's a huge difference. It's what we call unexpected relevance. When you use a search engine, you expect relevance. You type in a keyword and you expect to get links to content that might be somehow relevant to that keyword that you entered. If you open your Facebook, you don't know what's coming in. If you open your Twitter or your Instagram or your Tumblr feed or whatever, you don't know what's coming in. It's unexpected relevance that comes into your newsfeed. So we find stuff that we are not looking for. This is very important when you want to run a successful digital business in future, how to serve people in order to bring them to content that they're not explicitly looking for. So this content is brought to us not by any chief editor or by anyone who selects it by his greater knowledge of what we should encounter in the web, but by our friends, by our social connections. So there are asymmetrical social connections, like following someone on Twitter. I can follow someone, but he doesn't have to follow me back, right? That's asymmetrical. On Facebook, this is also possible, but not widely spread. On Facebook, you have basically symmetrical connections to other people. If I want to befriend someone on Facebook, they have to confirm. And what happens is this confirmation basically is the right, the mutual right to post in each other's newsfeed. A social connection is nothing else but a permission to post into my newsfeed. If I'm saying I follow build.de, which I don't do, but if I would follow them, I would allow them to post content into my newsfeed. That's the simple meaning of a social connection nowadays in modern social networks. So we are selecting our chief editors for content for our feeds by ourselves, right? We give them permission to post in our feeds. And every modern social network has this mechanism of a newsfeed. Like on Facebook it's called newsfeed, on Twitter it's called timeline. I think on Tumblr and on Instagram it's basically just the feed. On LinkedIn it's called newsfeed, on Pinterest it's a board. But the mechanics behind these are always the same. Almost nothing happens on your account pages. I don't know if my Twitter profile page has more than 3 page views in its history, right? No one goes to your account page to see what you do there, but waits for content from you to come into their streams. These account pages, your fan page on Facebook or your Twitter account or your Instagram account, is merely a container. It's basically a content management system for you to publish content into feeds of people that are connected to you, right? And like every good content management system, it still archives the stuff. And unlike most content management systems that professional companies use, it even would tell you for a Facebook fan page, for example, how many people have seen the piece of content that you published, how many have liked it, how many have commented, how many of your fans have seen it, how many of people who were not your fans have seen it, etc., etc. So it's basically a content management system that you get and an archive of whatever you have published into feeds of other people. So the basic mechanics of feeds is our connections are sources. These sources post content. They either produce content by themselves or they find content anywhere in the web and post this. And this content is arranged by some logic within a newsfeed. In most cases, this logic is time, right? So on Instagram, if you open your Instagram feed, the newest post is on top and the oldest post is at the bottom and you have to scroll in between. Or on Twitter. Twitter has announced that they will produce something called timeline highlights. So if you are offline for 5 hours and then you log on to Twitter again, it would show you what happened during those 5 hours, at least the most relevant tweets. But currently, right now, if you imagine you would follow both Barack Obama and me, And Barack Obama would tweet, "I've had it with the Russians, I nuke them." And 5 seconds later, I tweet, going up the stairs. My tweet will be on top of your newsfeed, right? On top of your timeline, and his tweet will be one below. It will then, of course, be retweeted, which is the only mechanism Twitter actually has at the moment to bring more relevant tweets again on top, right? On Facebook, that's different. Time is also one criteria and an important criteria. But there's also, for example, there's a trillion criteria in the Facebook newsfeed algorithm, but also, for example, affinity between sender and receiver. Facebook basically checks if I interact a lot with a sender, the probability of their next post being in my newsfeed is a lot higher than if I don't interact with that sender, right? So you should try this out. You have friends on Facebook that you basically do not interact with, and after a certain period of time, they will just be not in your newsfeed anymore because there's too much content that Facebook could show you where they assume this would be more relevant. If you then start to send direct messages through Facebook Messenger to these people, and you exchange some news, you will see that content from these people will start to pop up in your newsfeed again, because they are calculating that maybe because you sent direct messages with this person has now again a higher affinity to you as a receiver. So from them as a sender, they will show the content with a higher probability. So there are also, let's say, very evolved logics for organizing content in news feeds. Right? So in broader context, there are sources that exist outside our feeds. They simply exist. There is a Sport1 fan page, whether you follow it or not, and there is a sport1.de entity, whether you ever go there or not. But if you connect with these sources, you give them permission to post into our feeds, so that's what they do. And this content is arranged by some logic. And this also goes beyond social networks. You almost of you will know Flipboard, right? Anyone who does not know Flipboard? News aggregator. So on Flipboard, you go there and you can define sources like Washington Post, New York Times, Bleacher Report, Yahoo Entertainment, or whatever. You can define sources that participate in the service. And Flipboard will then take content published by these sources and arrange it by some logic for you in a feed, right? I assume every one of you knows Tinder. Back in the old days, if you would do online dating, you would have a search engine, and you could type in, "I'm searching for women 18 to 29, single," and you had to enter like 1,000 criteria, and then you would get a result, which is basically a link list, right? Now content comes to us instead of us moving to profiles of others. We open Tinder, and Tinder selects content, in this case, ladies or boys, and this content is again arranged by some logic. I personally assume that people who are closer connected to you because you share interests, fan pages, or because you share friends, will be shown earlier to you than people that you are not connected to, right? So we see that logic of content coming to us instead of us moving to content also outside of social networks. That's a huge paradigm shift. Content is being delivered to us. We can wait. Relevant stories will find us. We do not have to go to web pages, right, to see what happens there. So not we are moving to content. And now content delivery is something that becomes very important. For example, sites like the New York Times. I hope all of you have seen the leaked innovation report of the New York Times. And if not, look it up, Google it, find it, because you're not connected to me and I cannot post it into your news feeds. They have shown, for example, that by getting people on their site from social media, from Twitter and Facebook, for example, the share of traffic that the homepage got is going downhill like nothing else. So in the early days, everyone would type in newyorktimes.com, start at the homepage, and then navigate through that site, right? Now, when you come from social media, when you get bits of content in your feed and click on links, you go directly to article pages, which is strange for someone whose inventory is based on homepage takeovers, right? That's the easiest thing to sell as a website, when you market your inventory, the homepage takeover is the most attractive piece that you have, or that you had, because there's not many people going to homepages anymore. So delivering content to people instead of waiting for people to come becomes a complex task, because we are on so many different devices and on so many different platforms nowadays. So you can produce a piece of content that you see on top, could be a photo, could be an article, could be a video, and then you can reach me through a number of software platforms like WhatsApp, or you could reach me through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, or on an operating system, an app running on an operating system like on Windows or on Android or on iOS. You could reach me through a browser, you could reach me through a gaming console, you can reach me on a smartphone, on a tablet, on a smartwatch, on my glasses probably in future, on my television that can be connected through an Apple TV, or which I'm casting content on through my Chromecast. So it's a very complicated world, and the world that we live in is basically a mobile world, because in this picture the two dominating devices are not the PC and the laptop anymore, it's the smartphone and the tablet. So whenever you think about content distribution in future, think of small screen sizes, think of people who could be on the move, but also like 98% of people who access the internet with their smartphone also do this from home, right? I'm not getting up to go to the desk to enter the internet. I have my tablet or my smartphone at hand. So in this world, Facebook, for example, has twice the mobile exclusive users than desktop exclusive users, right? Q3 2014, 1.35 billion Facebook users, 1.1 billion of them at least used Facebook also on mobile. Just 200 million were desktop exclusive. 450 million are mobile exclusive, right? They do not know how the desktop website looks, and they're not interested in this. ESPN, probably know that, a sports media company owned by Disney, huge in the US. In September 2014, 55% mobile exclusive users, right? So this thing here is a thing of the past. So in this world, you have to separate content from its distribution to people. So, oops, what happened? You have to separate content production and content distribution. So you produce a piece of content, but it has to be independent from its original digital source. So you send a piece of content into a Facebook newsfeed, it's independent from the New York Times where it has originally been published, right? It's also independent from other content on that very destination. We are used from physical media. You have a newspaper in your hands, there's an article about terrorists, and there's an article about an actor next to it because it's in the same media, it's the same origin, right? In feeds, this is gone. You read the article about the terrorist because it's in your newsfeed. You have no idea that there exists another article about an actor from the same media company or the same entity. So content becomes independent, it breaks free from its original digital source, from other content on that source, from the distribution channel as such, right? Whether it's in a browser or an app or whatever, and also, of course, from the displaying device. Okay? Content in its smallest units has to be independent from all that in a digital world. In a physical world, that was simply not possible, right? But in a digital world, it is. And in this world, and now we look a little bit from the present into the future, cards are a predominant design principle. At least at the moment it looks like cards would be the answer to these challenges that the complexity of this world brings to us. What is a card? You all know cards, but maybe you don't know that you know. You have to imagine cards like a creative canvas. It's a piece of code actually, but it's a creative canvas where you can put content in, but also have the ability to put interaction with that content in. So you would have an image or a text or a video, but you would also have the possibility to like or to retweet or to comment or to do something with that content within one single card. For example, a Facebook post is a card. If any of you still uses the desktop and you reload the page, you sometimes see a certain frame there, that's the card, and then the content loads afterwards. So in that card you have a certain amount of content, like in this case an image and a headline and a link, but you would also have like 10,000 likes or 2,000 comments and the information about 4,000 shares. And once you click on comment, this card can expand. So it carries way more information and way more possibilities than you saw at the very beginning. It was presented to you in a short form, then you click on comment, it expands, and you see that it carries 2,000 comments from other people, for example. A tweet is basically just a card. This is a tweet, how you know it from the web, desktop, right? It has content in it, it has a picture in it, it has a link in it, it has retweets in it, right? It has favs in it. And on a mobile, it looks like this. It's the same card. This is a technical revolution. It's the same piece of content, but it adapts to the screen size that you're delivering it to. There's stuff not shown in this card, which are the faces of people who favorited this tweet, right? Here you see faces, no faces. The image gets smaller because it's a rectangle screen, right? In portrait and not landscape. And the text is basically the same. And the interaction possibilities are the same, right? There's many companies who are moving into cards currently. ESPN, with these mobile numbers, no wonder, have just announced that they will publish on cards in future. So cards are a design principle, basically a technical invention, but a design principle that allows you to simply say something in little words or an image, but then also on that same card have the longer story and let people dig into content deeper, no matter on which device they are, right? This is from a blog. The blogs are full of cards currently. If you Google, because you're not connected to me and I cannot post in your feeds, so if you Google cards, future of the web, you will find tons of articles. This is a great example of how easy it could be to have a headline, and if you want to know more than just an image or a headline, then just click on the card and it's already delivered to you, and you can see that on whichever device you are. And here's one recommendation for a blog, a company called Intercom, a US-based company, and they have a guy there called Paul Adams who writes great blog articles, who did this picture, which I just stole from him, so I have to say it's from him. So you see here cards in 3 different statuses. So there's a summary card, there's a regular card, and there's an extended card. And on whichever device you're publishing, for example, on a desktop PC, you can have 3 columns of cards. And then some logic has to decide which card will be displayed extended, which card will be displayed regular, and which will be displayed in a summary. There's algorithms and there's logic that publishers have to learn. But for example, on a mobile, you would just be able to have only one card, right? That's your Facebook experience, by the way. There's just one card and you can scroll. That's your Instagram experience. So publishing in this form is basically something that allows you to serve any device imaginable out there. Google Now, for example, I don't know who uses this in Germany. In the US, many people do. Google Now is based on cards. They even name these things cards, right? So you see an information about the weather and it says, I have 3 more cards for you, which you can then expand and get more information. And at that very same time, we're talking about a social world where feeds dominate the distribution of content, which happens basically on mobile devices, like tablets and smartphones. At the same time, apps are still a destination web. Now remember, the web is still a baby. The Apple iPhone was launched in April 2007. So it's just 7.5 years old. This is super early in the life cycle of technology. So this is still a destination web. These deserts of icons, that's nothing but a bookmark list that is just nicer to the eye. So my old browser bookmark list looked like this, and now on my mobile device, the bookmark list looks like this. But it's basically a bookmark list. You have to click on the destination. You have to move to that destination to get any value from it. So just as we overcame me going to The Guardian every single morning to see what this newspaper has for me, where I could sit on my stream and just wait for interesting information to come on my mobile device, I will have to find that icon, click on it, and then open the app to get any value from it. So I have so many apps installed. What I do is I just use search. Still destination web logic. I use the Google window on the Android phone, or I use the search on the iPad or the iPhone, and I type in MyFitnessPal, and as I'm typing, I already get the recommendation of, you have this app installed, don't you want to open this? And this system is old. It's a destination web. We have overcome it on many other devices, and it is basically dysfunctional. This is the most positive number I have found. I have found much more devastating numbers. But 20% of apps that are downloaded are used once, just one single time. And I have found numbers that say 70 or 80% of apps that are downloaded are used just one single time. But let's stay optimistic. So I say 5 times, yes, download, yes, install, yes, I've read the reviews and it's nice, yes, I give it permission to use my camera and my microphone. And 1 time out of 5 times, I open this app once. That's a dysfunctional system, right? So again, a positive number. According to this one study, we are using 20 to 30 different apps per month. I have found other studies that say we use between 1 and 10 apps per month on average. But let's say I'm using 20 apps per month. Still, there's like a million choices, and I'm using 20 apps? Are you serious? Is this system functional? Is it a good system? While on average, an Android user has 95 apps installed, and he uses 20 apps or 30 apps on average each month. So with an app install, as a marketer, for example, you have reached exactly nothing, right? So this system is not really working, but there are developments. And funny thing is, these developments are a combination of cards and feeds. So notifications, for example, are becoming cards. I sent for this talk an email to myself, and on an Android phone, for example, you get a notification. There's an email from Evangelos. You can expand the notification, read the whole email, and you can archive, snooze, or reply from the notification without opening the app. Archive is basically deleting it. Snooze means remind me someone else. If I want to reply, then the Gmail app opens. Otherwise, I do everything from the notification on this card. So a notification, which used to be just a simple information, a retailer saying, hey, I have a new product, right? It becomes now interactive, saying I have a new product and you can be reminded later or even buy it. And actually, remind me later currently would mean the notification closes, the app doesn't open. Shop me would mean we would have to go into the app. But in the near future, we may even be able to buy stuff out of notifications without opening apps, right? And iOS, same thing. What you just saw was an Android example. An iMessage, the messenger from iPhone to iPhone or iPad to iPad, in between iOS, you get the whole message in your notification. You can answer the message within that notification. You do not open the app anymore, right? You don't have to. You can mark tasks as done or snooze them, or you get a calendar invite. You can decline or accept the invite without opening the calendar app. This happens within that card. So what does this remind you of? It's basically a stream, right? On the newest Android version, Lollipop, this is your notification stream. And it looks like a stream of cards. And this can very well be, and I'm not the only one who thinks that this will happen, the future of how we use apps, right? Because the mechanic behind that is so obvious from feeds. So downloaded apps are sources with a permission to post into our feeds. And maybe we will have many feeds, maybe not one. Maybe we will have a private feed, a work feed, a friend feed, or whatever, right? You could have 3 or 4 different ones. But if you download an app, you can just say, I give this app the permission to send me notifications into my stream. These sources post content, and then this content is arranged by some logic. So Android or iOS, these have to learn to arrange these notifications by relevance for me as a user. And then the apps are just like a fan page or just like a Twitter account, are just a container, a content management system to publish content into feeds of users of smartphones and tablets, right? So that's at the moment a theory, but a very probable one about how content distribution will change. And again, from Paul Adams and his great blog, this is just a scribble of how that could look like. You would have your smartphone and you would have a stream of notifications coming in from different services, from apps that you gave the permission to post into your feed. And if you then, for example, scroll horizontally, you can get more from this service, like more Facebook posts. And if you scroll vertically, you get notifications from other apps that you have installed that come into your feed. So to wrap this up, we will, of course, still open apps, just like we still visit websites, right? This will not die from one day to another, but we will open these apps maybe on our own initiative, but more from notifications, which I believe. And the future of distributing content, which means the future of reaching audiences, which is important not only for publishers, but for anyone who has digital media with a business purpose. The future is in designing systems that bring content to people instead of running destinations and hoping that people will come to those destinations, right? And then spending money on making your domain awareness higher and getting people on your site. So we will not design destinations anymore. We will design systems that publish content. And these systems have to manage how atomic units of content, single stories that we're publishing, independent from other stories that we're publishing, will find their way on devices like this, to reach audience on devices like this, wherever these people are. Thank you very much.